Elena maintained her diplomatic smile as the council representatives continued their condescending laughter. The massive chamber, with its soaring crystal spires and gravity-defying architecture, was designed to intimidate visitors, a fact not lost on the human delegation. Ambassador Chen, rumbled Krell, the Voldar security director, his 4 arms folded across his armored chest. Surely you understand the generosity of our offer. Most developing species wait centuries for an invitation to even address the council. Elena nodded politely, studying the aliens arrayed before her. The Arctians, with their crystalline exoskeletons that refracted light in hypnotic patterns. The hulking Voldars, whose militaristic society was evident in every calculated movement. The serpentine Slith, silent and watchful from their elevated platforms. 5 other dominant species she had memorized from the briefing files. "We appreciate the Council's consideration," she replied, her voice steady despite the tension. "Earth simply requires time to properly review these terms." High Counselor Zexterra's crystalline form shimmered with barely concealed impatience. "What is there to review? You will receive protection from spacefaring predator species. Limited technology transfers appropriate for your development level. The resource quotas are entirely reasonable. Merely 80% of your rare earth elements and 30% of your water reserves." Dr. Sanjay Mehta, Earth's leading xenobiologist, cleared his throat beside Elena. "If I might inquire, these technology transfers you mention, would they include medical advancements? Earth has several concerning diseases." "Medical technology is restricted to Category 3 member worlds," interrupted a Peric representative, its gelatinous form pulsing with blue light. "Earth would begin at Category 7, naturally." "Naturally," Elena echoed, making another subtle adjustment to her quantum recorder. Commander Diana Rodriguez, the delegation's security officer, stood rigidly at Elena's side. Her military training barely contained her indignation, but her face remained impassive. Only Elena noticed the commander's hand tightening on her ceremonial sidearm, an empty gesture, as the weapon had been disabled upon their arrival. "You have 1 standard rotation to convey our generous terms to your planetary leaders," Zexterra concluded, rising to his full 3-meter height. "The Council has many matters to address beyond the inclusion of yet another primitive world." As the delegation was escorted from the chamber, they passed through a magnificent atrium where representatives from dozens of species mingled. Elena noted with interest how they segregated themselves. Dominant council races clustered in the center, while the associate species remained deferentially at the periphery. Back aboard their shuttle, Commander Rodriguez finally unleashed her fury. "Did you hear them? 80% of our resources. They're not looking for allies. They're looking for a planet to strip mine." Elena raised a cautioning hand as Dr. Mehta activated a signal jammer. The small device hummed softly, creating a protective bubble against surveillance. "They showed their hand exactly as intelligence predicted," Elena said, her diplomatic mask falling away to reveal shrewd calculation. "They see us as primitives with a resource-rich world. They have no idea about the Ganymede defense grid or the Mars colonies, or that we've been monitoring their transmissions for decades," added Dr. Mehta, reviewing the quantum recording. Elena gazed out the viewport at the massive council station. Its imposing architecture, once intimidating, now seemed like the facade of a crumbling empire. "Send the coded message to Colonel Wade," she instructed Commander Rodriguez. "Operation Watershed is a go." The commander smiled as she transmitted the signal that would set Earth's true plans in motion. "They think we're walking the way defeated," Elena said, watching the distant blue sphere of Earth come into view. "But sometimes, walking the way is the first step to victory." Colonel Wade's holographic presentation concluded, leaving Earth's Defense Council in stunned silence. The war room, buried 2 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains, hummed with the soft vibration of quantum processors analyzing the Council's offer from every angle. "So they expect us to hand over most of our planet's resources for the privilege of becoming their servants," President Okafor said, her voice calm despite the outrage evident in her eyes. and they believe we have no choice but to accept. Director Maya Patel nodded, her fingers dancing across her neural interface to bring up new projections. The air above the central table shimmered as classified images materialized. The reverse-engineered propulsion system from the Zeta-9 crash, the quantum shield generators on Ganymede, the stealth fleet stationed behind Jupiter's moons. Their intelligence on Earth is severely outdated, Patel explained. They're aware we've achieved rudimentary space travel, but their survey vessels never detected our off-world installations. The Arxian sensor technology focuses on specific energy signatures we've learned to mask. Admiral Santos leaned forward, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the holograms. The question remains, do we reveal our true capabilities or maintain the deception? Wade gestured toward another display showing intercepted communications between Council worlds. Our advantage isn't just technological. Look here. The Mendari delegation formally protested resource quotas last cycle, only to be publicly humiliated. The Phosians requested medical assistance during their recent pandemic, but were denied because of their classification level. The Council isn't a unified government, Patel added. It's a protection racket run by 7 dominant species exploiting everyone else. Dr. Eliza Chen, Ambassador Chen's sister and Earth's foremost cynoanthropologist, highlighted specific Council species. These 3, the Tellarians, Orovians, and Bricks, have suffered most under Council dominance. They possess valuable resources but limited military capability. They're potential allies if approached correctly. President Okafor circled the table slowly, studying each projection. What would happen if we simply walked away? Not as a negotiating tactic, but genuinely withdrew from consideration. The room fell silent again as Wade initiated a probability simulation. Numbers and trajectories flowed across the displays, calculating outcomes across thousands of variables. No species has ever rejected Council membership, Wade said. Their entire power structure is built on the assumption that primitive worlds need their protection and will accept any terms to receive it. If we shatter that assumption, their foundation crumbles. Patel finished. President Okafor nodded, decision made. Transmit new instructions to Ambassador Chen. Earth formally rejects all Council terms and withdraws from consideration for membership. Simultaneously, activate our diplomatic channels to the Tellarians, Orovians, and Bricks. Admiral Santos raised an eyebrow. The Council will see this as an insult. They may respond with force. Wade smiled, bringing up one final display, detailed schematics of Council military vessels, with specific vulnerabilities highlighted. Let them try. Operation Watershed doesn't just anticipate their response. It depends on it. As the Council adjourned, Dr. Chen lingered with Wade in the war room. The ambassador asked me something before she left for the Council station, she said quietly. She asked whether I thought humanity was ready to change the galaxy. Wade watched the simulation continue its calculations, possibilities branching into thousands of potential futures. I think the better question is whether the galaxy is ready for humanity. Outside the mountain complex, normal life continued. Citizens going about their daily routines had no idea that in a few hours, Earth would make a move that would reverberate across the stars for generations to come. The Council chamber's perfect acoustics amplified every uncomfortable shuffle and murmur following Elena's announcement. She stood calmly at the center of the speaking floor, her posture relaxed despite the mounting tension. Ambassador Chen, High Counselor Zex Terra finally spoke, crystal fragments on his exoskeleton chiming discordantly. Perhaps our translator has malfunctioned. You cannot possibly mean to reject Council membership. Elena smiled politely. Our translators are functioning perfectly, Counselor. Earth appreciates your consideration but declines all proposed terms. We withdraw our application for membership, effective immediately. Krell of the Volders lurched forward, all 4 hands gripping the railing of his elevated platform. This is unprecedented. The protection of the Council is not offered lightly. Without it, your world stands alone against the Void's many dangers. "We're aware of the risks," Alina replied, noting with interest how the smaller council species were reacting. The Talarians, with their iridescent eye membranes, blinked rapidly in what her briefing suggested indicated excitement. The Orovian skin patterns were shifting from formal diplomatic blues to curious oranges. Sextera's voice hardened. "Perhaps humans fail to comprehend galactic realities. There are predator species who would view your world as nothing more than resources and slaves. The Dravax Armada alone would reduce your cities to ash within days." Commander Rodriguez stepped forward, her hand instinctively moving to where her weapon would be. Alina subtly motioned her back. "We've studied the histories," Alina said, "including the curious absence of Dravax activity near council borders for the past 80 cycles, almost as if they've been receiving resource shipments to stay away." A ripple of shock pulsed through the chamber. This was classified information no primitive world should possess. Elder Tisaro of the Slith uncoiled from his meditative posture, forked tongue sampling the air. "You speak of matters beyond your clearance, human." "Perhaps," Alina conceded, glancing at her delegation's chronometer. "But we've taken enough of the Council's valuable time. Earth thanks you for your consideration." As the human delegation turned to leave, a small BRICS representative scurried alongside them, speaking rapidly in their clicking language. The translator rendered, "The Council doesn't allow rejection. They will retaliate." Alina paused, ensuring the Council's audio pickups would catch her response. "Then they will learn about humanity firsthand, rather than from outdated surveys." Outside the chamber, in the vessel docking bay, the delegation was approached by a Talarian diplomatic aide, who pressed a data crystal into Dr. Meta's hand before quickly retreating. Once aboard their ship, the science officer examined the crystal. It contains coordinates, 3 meeting locations in neutral space, exactly as Colonel Wade predicted, Alina said as Commander Rodriguez initiated departure protocols. Oppressed species reaching out the moment they sense an alternative. The Council station shrank in their viewport as the Earth vessel accelerated away. In the privacy of her quarters, Alina activated a secure quantum channel. Phase 1 complete, she reported to the familiar face appearing in the hologram. The Council reacted exactly as expected. Shock, then threats. The Talarians, Orovians, and BRICS have already made contact. Colonel Wade's holographic image nodded with satisfaction. The station's external sensors. Commander Rodriguez deployed the microdrones during our exit. We'll have eyes and ears throughout their facility within hours. Excellent, Wade replied. Prepare for Phase 2. The Council believes you're returning directly to Earth. Instead, you'll rendezvous with the Artemis at the coordinates the Talarians provided. Alina glanced at the starfield outside her window. The Council called us primitive, but they forgot something important about human history. What's that? Wade asked. The most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the biggest weapons, Alina said. It's the one with nothing to lose and everything to gain. By pushing us away, they've freed us to make our own rules. The ship's engines hummed as it altered course, veering away from Earth toward an unexpected destination, and a galactic turning point no one had anticipated. Admiral Vox stood on the command deck of the Arxian flagship, Inevitable Dominance, his crystalline form pulsing with anticipation as Earth grew larger in the view screen. The 5 battlecruisers had emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their weapon systems powering up for what the Admiral expected to be a brief show of force. Status report, Vox demanded, his voice resonating through the command crystal. All systems optimal, Admiral, his second reported. No sign of significant defensive installations. Their primitive satellites have detected our presence, but their vessels remain docked on their lunar base. Vox made a sound approximating satisfaction. Open a channel to their planetary leadership. Let us see how quickly they reconsider the Council's generous offer. The communications officer worked his controls, then frowned. Admiral, we're being hailed by the humans. Put it through, Vox ordered, straightening to his full height to project appropriate dominance for these primitives. The view screen shifted to show a dark-skinned human male in a simple blue uniform bearing minimal ornamentation. Behind him was what appeared to be an underwater command center with officers calmly moving about their duties. Arxian vessels, this is Colonel Jackson Wade of Earth Defense. You have entered sovereign space without permission. State your intentions. Vox was momentarily taken aback by the human's composed demeanor, but quickly recovered. This is Admiral Vox of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. Your planet has unwisely rejected Council protection. We are here to reconsider your situation. Wade smiled slightly. By reconsider, you mean demonstrate your military superiority until we accept your original exploitative terms. Impudence. Vox's crystalline form flashed with anger. You have 10 of your minutes to power down your pathetic defenses and prepare to receive our terms. Otherwise, we will disable your orbital infrastructure as a demonstration. Wade nodded to someone off-screen. I don't think that will be happening, Admiral. Vox was about to respond when his tactical officer called out in alarm. Admiral, unknown energy signature enveloping our vessels. Throughout the Phi ship fleet, warning signals blared as an invisible field encompassed each battlecruiser. Weapon systems went offline first, followed by propulsion, communications, and finally life support reserves. Only minimal systems remained functional. On the view screen, Wade's expression remained neutral. Your ships are now contained within our quantum suppression field. Your weapons, engines, and communications with the Council have been neutralized. Only this channel remains open. Vox's rage manifested as pulsing red light cascading through his crystalline body. Impossible. Your species lacks this technology. According to whom? Wade asked mildly. Your outdated surveys. Your arrogant assumptions. The colonel leaned forward. Let me be clear, Admiral. We could destroy your fleet right now, but unlike the Council, we don't believe might makes right. Your crews will remain safe, and once we've concluded our conversation, you'll be free to return to Council space. From the secondary command deck, Vox's science officer reported with trembling tones. Admiral, I'm detecting similar energy signatures throughout our formation. They weren't deployed when we arrived. They were already here, waiting. Realization dawned on Vox like a cold wave. You knew we were coming. Wade nodded. We've been intercepting Council communications for decades. Your predictable response was factored into our strategy from the beginning. The Admiral stared in disbelief as Wade continued. While we speak, similar conversations are occurring across the galaxy. The Mendari, Phosians, and Talarians are announcing their withdrawal from Council treaties. The Orovians are sharing technological innovations previously suppressed by Council regulations. Wade's expression remained composed but firm. You came expecting to find an isolated primitive world. Instead, you've discovered the catalyst for change that the galaxy has needed for centuries. In that moment, as his mighty warships floated powerless in space, Admiral Vox realized they had catastrophically misjudged humanity. This wasn't a show of force. It was the beginning of a revolution. Telek scurried through the Council Station's research wing, his diminutive Morian form dwarfed by the towering data columns. Emergency meetings had been called throughout the station following the Arxian fleet's humiliation, and the xenobiologist had been summoned to explain the inexplicable. How had humans advanced so rapidly? The Grand Chamber was in chaos when he arrived. Representatives from a dozen worlds shouted over each other, while the normally composed Zexterra's crystalline form pulsed with erratic patterns of distress. Silence. The High Counselor's amplified voice reverberated through the chamber. We will have order. As the noise subsided, Zexterra gestured to Telex. Our chief xenobiologist has completed his urgent assessment of human capabilities. Proceed, researcher. Telex activated his data projection, and a detailed hologram of Earth appeared in the chamber center. Esteemed council members, Telex began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Our fundamental error was classifying humans using standard developmental models. They are, quite simply, an anomaly. The projection shifted to show Earth's varied environments. Most Council species evolved in relatively stable conditions. The Arxians in crystal deserts, Volters in gravitational stability, Slith in constant humidity. But humans, the hologram highlighted Earth's extreme variations. Desert to tundra, mountain to ocean trench, their world experiences temperature variations that would kill most Council species. Murmurs spread through the chamber as Telex continued. This environmental pressure created something unique. A species that doesn't optimize, they adapt. Where we perfect a single solution, they create dozens of alternatives. A hologram shifted to historical human conflicts. Most concerning is their response to existential threats. When faced with overwhelming force, Council species typically surrender or negotiate. Humans innovate. Krell of the Volters leaned forward. You speak of a primitive's quirk, not a strategic advantage. With respect, Security Director, Telex countered, highlighting intercepted communications between Earth and former Council worlds. This quirk has allowed them to forge alliances with 12 species in just 6 months. They're not building an empire, they're creating a network. A Barrack representative's gelatinous form rippled with agitation. Why would established worlds risk Council sanction for association with humans? Because humans offer something we never did, Telex said quietly. Partnership without domination. They share technology freely rather than as leverage. As if on cue, an aide rushed in and whispered urgently to Zexterra. The High Councilor's crystalline structure briefly dimmed, a sign of extreme shock. The Mendari have publicly announced their treaty withdrawal, Zexterra reported, his voice unnaturally flat. They cite fundamental incompatibility with Council values and announce a new mutual defense pact with Earth. The chamber erupted again until Elder Tessero's sibilant voice cut through the noise. If the Mendari have access to human quantum technology, others will follow. The Council's strength has always been our technological superiority. Telex nodded gravely. And therein lies our miscalculation. We assumed advanced technology requires centuries of stable development, but humans progressed from primitive flight to quantum manipulation in less than 300 cycles because of their chaotic evolution. What exactly are you suggesting? Krell demanded. That our entire approach was wrong, Telex replied. We offered humans a position of subservience, assuming they would accept any terms for access to our knowledge. But they don't want what we have. They want what we've prevented. Collaboration, innovation, freedom to evolve. The silence that followed was broken by a junior aide announcing another emergency transmission. On screens throughout the chamber appeared the face of Ambassador Chen, surrounded by representatives from former Council client worlds. Greetings, Council members, Alina said calmly. I believe it's time we discussed new terms, as equals. In that moment, as representatives exchanged horrified glances, Telex saw something unprecedented in his centuries of Council service, fear in the eyes of the dominant species. The cracks in their carefully constructed power structure weren't just spreading. They were about to shatter. High Councilor Zexterra stood in the Arxian war chamber, surrounded by holographic displays of the assault fleet approaching Earth. Despite the Council's divided opinion, the Arxian Directorate had unilaterally authorized this corrective action against the upstart humans. 15 additional warships had joined the 5 immobilized vessels from the previous encounter, creating what Arxian military doctrine considered an overwhelming force. The humans have shown impressive defensive capabilities. General Vexnar conceded, his crystalline form vibrating with anticipation. But no developing species can withstand a full battle group. Their quantum tricks worked against 5 ships. They cannot possibly counter 20. Zexterra nodded, though doubt flickered through his crystalline matrix. The Volters refused to participate, along with the Slith and, surprisingly, the Barracks, the general replied. They claim this action exceeds Council authority without a formal vote. Cowardice, Zexterra dismissed. When we succeed, they will happily share in the renewed stability. The tactical display showed the fleet entering Earth's solar system, weapons primed. Rather than the stealthy approach of the previous mission, this was a deliberate show of force, designed to overwhelm through sheer firepower and numbers. Meanwhile, in the underwater command center beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Colonel Wade watched the approaching fleet with remarkable composure. Surrounding him, officers coordinated with defense platforms and allied vessels hidden throughout the solar system. "They've taken the bait," Wade remarked to President Okafor, who stood beside him observing the tactical display. 20 ships, all Arxian. No other Council species participating. "Exactly as you predicted," the President noted. The Arxians couldn't resist acting unilaterally to save face. Wade nodded to his communications officer. "Activate the defense grid and signal our allies. It's time." Throughout the solar system, invisible quantum fields shimmered into partial visibility, not as defensive barriers, but as an intricate web. Each approaching Arxian vessel suddenly found itself isolated within a containment sphere, cut off from the others. On the flagship, Arxian Supremacy, Admiral Kazvos watched in horror as his carefully coordinated attack dissolved into 20 isolated engagements. Worse, unexpected vessels emerged from hiding places throughout the system, ships bearing the markings of Mendari, Phosian, and even Tellurian design, each incorporating elements of human technology. "Impossible," the Admiral whispered as his weapons officers reported system after system failing. Unlike the previous encounter, these weren't simplistic shutdown fields. Each Arxian ship was experiencing targeted disruptions to specific systems, as if the defenders intimately understood Arxian technology. A transmission cut through the confusion, appearing on every vessel simultaneously. President Okafor's image materialized on command displays. "Arxian fleet, your unprovoked attack on a sovereign world violates even the Council's own protocols. Your vessels have been contained, not destroyed, despite your hostile intent. This restraint is not weakness. It is the difference between your approach and ours." The President's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the panic spreading through the Arxian command. "As we speak, observers from 17 formerly subjugated worlds are witnessing this encounter," she continued. "They see not only Earth's defensive capabilities, but our commitment to minimal force. You came to intimidate through destruction. We respond by simply saying, 'Enough.'" From his command center, Wade activated the final phase of Operation Scattered Seeds. Throughout Council space, the network of stealth platforms deployed months earlier activated simultaneously. Instead of weapons, they broadcast a single synchronized message to every world under Council jurisdiction. The truth about the attack on Earth, the reality of Council exploitation, and an invitation to join a new galactic association based on mutual respect. On the Arxian homeworld, Zexterra watched his grand display of power transform into a humiliating demonstration of inadequacy. Every moment of the failed attack was being broadcast to worlds whose compliance had always been based on fear of Arxian military might. Fear that was now dissolving before his eyes. The High Counselor understood with crystal clarity. This wasn't just a tactical defeat. It was the end of an era. The Council's emergency session chamber had never been designed to accommodate so many species simultaneously. The traditional hierarchical arrangement, with dominant species on elevated platforms and lesser members below, now seemed absurdly outdated as representatives from 28 worlds filled every available space. High Counselor Zexterra's crystalline form had lost its brilliant luster, dulled by the diplomatic catastrophe unfolding around him. The Arxian military defeat had triggered a cascade of treaty withdrawals, public denouncements, and unprecedented demands for reform. Order. Zexterra called futilely as dozens of conversations continued unabated. The Council will have order. A sudden hush fell over the chamber, but not in response to the High Counselor's demands. The massive doors had opened to admit Ambassador Chen, flanked by representatives from formerly subjugated worlds. Unlike previous appearances where she had been escorted to a lower speaking position, Elena walked directly to the central platform, her delegation following without hesitation. "This is outrageous," Krell of the Volders protested, all four arms gesturing emphatically. "Non-members have no speaking rights in emergency session." Elena smiled pleasantly. "Perhaps you didn't receive the updated attendance roster, Security Director. Every being in my delegation represents a sovereign world that has signed the Stellar Concordat, a mutual recognition agreement that supersedes Council membership." She activated a small device, projecting a document into the chamber center. "We're not here to request Council recognition. We're here to offer the Council an opportunity to remain relevant in the new galactic reality." Murmurs spread through the chamber as representatives digested this unprecedented role reversal. The Council, arbiter of galactic affairs for 2 millennia, was being addressed as a potentially obsolete institution. "You overestimate your position, human," Zex Terra said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Temporary military success does not rewrite millennia of established order." "This isn't about military success," Elena countered, gesturing to her diverse delegation. "It's about offering an alternative to exploitation disguised as protection. Every world represented here has experienced Council generosity firsthand." A tall Phosian stepped forward, her luminescent skin patterns shifting with emotion. "The humans shared medical nanobiology freely. My world lost millions to a pandemic while the Council denied us access to treatments classified beyond our status level. The Arxian attack on Earth was broadcast throughout the galaxy," added a Tellurian representative. "Not their aggression. That was expected, but the human response. They could have destroyed the fleet but chose restraint." Zex Terra's rebuttal was interrupted by an unexpected voice from the Arxian section. Zex Mel, daughter of the High Counselor and renowned reformist, rose from her seat. "Father," she said, her crystalline form vibrating with determination, "I must speak." The chamber fell silent. Challenges to leadership within Council species were almost unheard of during formal proceedings. "The humans haven't dismantled the order we built," Zexmel continued. "They've exposed its fundamental flaws. For centuries, we've claimed to represent galactic stability while suppressing technological advancement, manipulating resource distribution, and enforcing compliance through threat of force." She moved to stand beside Elena, an act of symbolic defiance that sent shockwaves through the Arxian delegation. "I studied the human proposal. Their stellar concordat preserves the cooperative framework of our original vision, while eliminating the exploitation that corrupted it." Zex Terra's crystalline structure darkened with rage or shame. The distinction was impossible for non-Arxians to determine. "You would betray 2,000 years of tradition." "I would save what's worth preserving," his daughter replied calmly, "by letting go of what isn't." The station's sensors suddenly registered a massive influx of vessels entering the nearby space. Not a military formation, but a diplomatic flotilla representing every signatory of the new Concordat. Their arrival transmitted a clear message. The choice before the Council wasn't whether change would come, but whether they would adapt to it or be left behind. Elena watched the Council representatives' reactions, noting the precise moment when understanding dawned in their expressions. The galaxy's balance had already shifted. This meeting wasn't a negotiation. It was simply the formal acknowledgement of transformation already underway. The Convergence station rotated majestically against the backdrop of a nebula, its unique architecture reflecting the unprecedented collaboration that created it. One standard year after the Council's restructuring, representatives from 28 worlds gathered in the Grand Assembly Chamber for the inaugural session of the Stellar Concordat. Elena walked through the station's botanical gardens, appreciating how each section seamlessly transitioned between environments suited to different species. Unlike the rigid, stratified design of the old Council station, Convergence was built on principles of adaptation and complementary needs. "Ambassador Chen," a melodious voice called. Elena turned to see Zexmel approaching, her crystalline form refracting the garden's light in dazzling patterns. "Counselor Zexmel," Elena greeted her warmly. though I suppose that title has new meaning now. The Archean made a gesture of acknowledgement, equal representative among many, rather than elevated ruler of most, a necessary evolution. They strolled together through a section where earth plants intermingled with crystalline growths from the Archean homeworld, species that would never naturally coexist, thriving side by side through carefully designed systems. "My father refuses to attend," Zexmel said quietly. "He remains convinced that humans orchestrated the Council's downfall through deception." Elena smiled. "And what do you believe?" "That we deceived ourselves for centuries." The Archean paused before a hybrid flower, a rose grafted onto a crystal stem. "We convinced ourselves that dominance was necessary for stability, that lesser species needed our guidance." Below them, the assembly chamber was filling with representatives, each taking positions at the circular arrangement where no seat was elevated above others. The subtle symbolism wasn't lost on any attendee. "The Archean Science Academy has been studying your historical records," Zexmel continued. "Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times, yet each catastrophe sparked innovation rather than collapse. While we optimized around stability, you adapted through instability." They reached a viewing platform overlooking the station's central chamber. The adaptive architecture was subtly reconfiguring itself, adjusting gravity, atmosphere composition, and lighting in different sections to accommodate the unique needs of each species. "When you walked away from our peace talks," Zexmel said, finally asking the question that had lingered for a year, "you already knew what would happen, didn't you?" Elena considered the question carefully. "We knew the Council's structure was fundamentally unstable, that subjugation disguised as protection creates resentment, not peace. We anticipated that our rejection would expose those cracks." "Yet you never attacked, even when provoked," Zexmel observed. "Because conquering the Council would have simply replaced one dominant force with another," Elena replied. "True change required that each world choose freely to join something better." Below them, the Concordat session began with representatives from former Council worlds and newly recognized species taking turns to address the assembly. The Talarian speaker was followed by a Voldar, then a human, then a previously unrecognized species from the galaxy's outer rim, each given equal time and respect. "Some among the former Council races still resent the new arrangement," Zexmel admitted. "They see the technology-sharing requirements as weakening their advantage." Elena nodded. "Change is rarely comfortable, but look at what's already emerged from collaboration." She gestured toward the medical wing where Archean crystal technology combined with human quantum computing had created treatments for diseases that had plagued multiple species for centuries. Nearby, Mendari energy systems, enhanced by Voldar engineering principles, powered the station with unprecedented efficiency. "The remarkable truth," Elena said softly, "is that we never wanted to end peace. We wanted to create something worthy of the name." As they watched representatives from across the galaxy engaging as equals for the first time in millennia, Zexmel's crystalline form shimmered with a new pattern that Elena had learned to recognize as hope. "Your species walked away from peace talks," the Archean said, "and we thought it was rejection. We never considered it might be invitation to something better." The station continued its gentle rotation, a new center in a transformed galaxy, not a monument to power, but a testament to possibility.